Good morning, welcome to my Suzuki. We are right at the edge of May, end of April, here in West Yorkshire. The sun's out, the birds are singing, and behind me I've got a gorgeous bronze pearlescent Suzuki Jimny. Very unusual colour, lovely colour in the sun, and it's really bringing it to life. This car is virtually flawless, however it does have a fault, and the fault is quite a common one, and we're going to investigate because I'm pretty sure I know what it is, and we're going to go through the process of fixing it. It's not a difficult fix. It's common and the fault with this car is it's revving too high. Its revs are just short 2,000 where it should be under 1,000. It should be somewhere around 750 to 800 when it settles down, when the engine's warm. And this is due to a tiny little like a rotor inside the throttle body called the idle control valve. You may have seen this when you've looked up a problem on your car, and people have said, yeah, have a look at your idle control valve. Not always obvious where it is, what it is, and what you should do with it. So we're going to break it down, we're going to pull it out, we're going to discuss briefly how it works. Fingers crossed, and this might sound really odd, fingers crossed that it's stuck in a little way and it needs freeing. So follow on along and let's get on with it. I was going to start with the engine running so you could see how high it's revving, but it would have been silly because you wouldn't have been able to hear me. As you can see, it sounds, you could tell it's over revving, but just to show you there, it should be sort of one graduation below 1, and it's nearly on 2. Apart from it using a bit too much fuel, but it's not ideal. Drives okay, but it shouldn't be ticking over like this. Notice as well the temperatures. It's up to temperature, so it should have backed off and calmed down a bit. And also, if you notice, which I might also do in this video, the speedo is just in kilometre per hour. We haven't changed that yet. I may change it on video for the next one, but we might change it today. looking there at, and you've got to remember this is a super clean engine, and that's still full of gunk. But we'll address that shortly. Right, so we'll address this first. Hopefully this is going to be in view for you. Make sure that your screwdriver is a perfect fit. You don't want to run these threads, but possibly. With this valve in here, it's a particular head on the fastener. And if you can see there, I don't know if, let me just have a look, see if that's in focus. If you can see that, it's not the usual Torx head. And it's so nice working on a car where everything just goes click and starts to undo. As you're undoing this, you will feel as you're taking the top off it. You will feel there's a slight magnetism in there. That's perfect because that's stuck. Movable, but not freely movable. So what I thought I'd do, I thought I will explain just briefly how the idle control valve works and why it's so important that it's not sticking. In the most basic of terms, anything that should be free that sticks needs freeing, and it will work. And to be honest, that's all you need to know. But for those of you who don't know and are a little bit inquisitive, in simple terms, this is the throttle body. This is where the accelerator cable fits on. So mechanically, when you put your foot down, it does that. And although people call the accelerator the gas pedal, you should really call it the air pedal because it lets more air in. And it's like ram air, it's like a turbo, it's like anything. The more air and fuel you can force into an engine, the faster it'll go. So as you put your foot down and it opens, that is fully open. It's on quite a stiff spring, and it will open and let all the air through. When you take your foot off completely, it's shut, and it's quite well sealed. It's not an absolute airtight, but it is a pretty good seal. So when you're taking your foot off the gas and you sat there idling, hence idle control valve, there's very little air getting in. So to control the air coming in, if you can see there's a little hole there. On the other side, which is very difficult to see, there's another hole there, and there are two chambers. The first hole, air comes into there. The second hole, air passes through there and goes into the engine when the butterfly is shut. And how much air that goes through really controls how fast the engine is going to idle. So you need something that's going to regulate that. And those two chambers there correspond to these two chambers, which we have just cleaned. So that literally is just to let air from the outside go onto the inside. Why I'm doing this is I thought it's quite interesting to know exactly what the function is. And if I can position this properly, if you see me turning that, Hopefully you can see that, and it literally is, as it goes around, it's closed and open, and anywhere in between, so it can be partially open, partially closed, let more or less air in. And there are two things that control where this rotor sits and how much air it's going to let in. The first one, and that's the reason for your coolant running through here, is it's linked up to your radiator, to the antifreeze, so it runs through here. This is full of water, and it is literally a spring in there, and as it gets warmer, so as your engine gets up to temperature, it will adjust how much air is coming in. So when it's cold, it will probably be sat quite open, and as the engine warms up, the spring will turn this and start to close it, and that is what makes the engine start off higher revs, which is like an automatic choke, but steadily drop down, and it does drop down quite quickly. It doesn't take very long to settle down at a nice even idle or tick over. The second thing that regulates this, because it's two things. One is the spring, which is mechanical. The second is, and if you look at that, it's quite a strong magnet there, is this. And this is a sensor that is connected to the ECU, and the ECU it's got two coils in there like electromagnets, which turn on and off as required to open and close this. So initially, when you start the engine, this is in control with the temperature of the engine, which as it gets warmer starts to turn the revs down. Then this takes over, and this controls the flow of air to the engine when it's idling, just in case, say for instance, you're parking and you want to turn the power steering, or you might be sat there, and if you've ever noticed this, if you're sat in a car and it's ticking over, press the air conditioning, suddenly the revs raise, and what's happened is there's a little bit more draw on the engine, so when you put the aircon on, the engine slightly opens this to compensate. And that's basically how all this works, and that's why it's so important that this is free. And there can be other issues that can be fixed by looking at this. It is such an easy fix, and it's such a common fail. Well, it's not really a fail, it's just they just do get a bit bunged up with carbon. They start to just need a bit of a clean. And then don't forget little spray of carb cleaner into here. Don't take a lot, but just get the gunk out. test. I don't know if you can tell, but already the revs are dropping. The engine is full now, because I won't mess you about, but it is substantially lower. I'll show you in a minute. One thing you need to remember is your water level is more than likely going to need topping up. And as if by magic, we now have a speedo face with miles per hour instead of kilometres. And what we're going to do, I've just warmed the engine up and run it for about 5 minutes. Just so that you can see, it always starts off a little high like that. Automatic clutch and choke, obviously. And there we go, down to a nice sensible sort of 750, 800 revs. Just where it needs to be, absolutely perfect. It's such a common thing. I also did a video on changing the speedo face if you're interested, which will be up around about the same time as this one's up. Until the next time, get revving.